Hello there. You're welcome to this program today, Life and Relationship Realities with Tolu Alabi. It's an amazing day for me, even though thinking about the story that we're about to share, it just kind of bring about mixed feelings because even before this broadcast, I had to discuss it with one of my sons, and we were just talking about it, and the complicated story, that is. But having said that, the thing about life is the fact that we can learn a lot. And so I want to welcome you again to Life and Relationship Realities. Like I always say, please say where you're watching from, the city, the country where you're watching from. It will go a long way to help us to talk about issues that are also peculiar to where you are from. And so today I just want to talk about this particular story. People will say, oh, it's allegedly this, but at this point, verdicts have been given already. So it's not something that is alleged, it's something that judgment has actually come upon. And so the story I'm talking about today, I'm not going to be mentioning the names of the people that are involved in this situation because um, it's not it's not a pleasant thing. So let's use that word, that it's not a pleasant thing, because children are involved and children that are living real life, children that goes to school, children that have friends, they probably have heard some of those things. But I think that for me, the lesson to be learned is what is most important in the story. Lessons to learn for those that are not married, lessons learned for people that are married. And it's not just about marriage. This can happen in any organization, this can happen in any form of relationship, either business relationship, colleagues at work, students, whatever relationship, this can actually happen anywhere. So this happened a few years ago. The judgment is just been some things that there are updates on the case even right now, up to last year, up to this year. There are updates on the verdict that has been given because appeal is being made upon appeal to overturn the judgment that was made. And I use the topic, deadly response, because the truth about life is life will always give us choice. And people will say, oh, yeah, but I don't have a choice in this matter. The truth is, we all do have. The issue is maybe we don't think of a choice at that particular time, and we only look at a particular angle and feel that that is the only choice that I'm given. But this happened some years ago, and it happened in Africa. And there was these two people that got married. The woman was from a very, very prominent family, very wealthy family, and the man that she married was also from a very prominent family in the country. I mean, it was a talk of the town wedding because it was the wedding that was attended with great people. Like if you have governors and president of a nation attending the wedding, then you know that it's not an ordinary wedding. So the wedding was actually a celebrated wedding with celebrities of all kinds attending the wedding. And of course, everybody was gonna like, oh, this is a beautiful wedding. The husband, the groom was looking very quiet and trim. The wife also was looking very quiet and beautiful, and so on. And so after the wedding, they got a child, and everybody was excited. The news went on, the publicity of the arrival of their first child, and that was a beautiful thing for them. But after the first child, things started happening. The wife got pregnant again, and so on. But there was a fateful day. There was a fateful day. There's always the day that things happen, either for the good or for the bad. My prayer for you and I is that God will always give us that day of glory, that day of beauty. But for this couple, it was the day that started like a normal day. But at the end of that day, going to the early hours of the next day, it was a day that became unusual and became deadly at the end of that day. So, what happened? This couple was visited by a friend, the groom's friend, which happened to be their friend. And they were downstairs with the groom, you know, with the husband and with the friend. They were there, all of them were there, but then the wife needed to make a phone call. So that was the story that was said by the friend. So whether that is true, whether that is not true, that's not why I'm telling the story. And so the wife needed to make a call. And so the wife went upstairs. The wife took the husband's phone to make a call. But I think maybe in the process of making the call, maybe a message came in, or maybe she checked the message. I wouldn't know. But the short story cut short for that scene was that she saw a picture on the husband's phone. So we can conclude to say maybe there was a cheating, maybe there was a picture of a woman, but it was that picture that triggered the woman. And the woman called the husband and they started arguing about it. And so the friend sat downstairs and the friend felt, oh yeah, maybe this is one of the arguments that do happen between husband and wife. They're gonna settle it and then they'll continue, their normal life. But at a point, he started hearing the word, I'm going to kill you if you don't divorce me right now. I'm going to kill you, and so on. So, because of what he was hearing, he had to go upstairs. By the time she got upstairs, they were holding each other's clothes, like holding the clothes to the neck and so on. And the wife insisting that the husband divorce her immediately, and that if the husband refused to divorce her, she was gonna hurt the husband. And the friend came in, tried to talk. The thing was escalating at this point. Words were being thrown, threats were being thrown around, and the friend decided to call family member. And they called family member, and this family member came and they tried to sit them down and address the situation. One thing that, according to the friend's story, the wife wasn't still calm, but there was a relatively peace at that point. Not deep peace because you could see that there was still boiling on the other side. And so they took the husband and they went out. And the friend brought back the husband in the midnight, like, okay, let the steam go off, calm down. That's what we usually tell men, isn't it? Move away for a while, go for a stroll, let everything remain calm, and then you come back. And so he came back, and when he was about to enter into his house, he told the friend, he said, I would have preferred my wife's sleep before I going. And they must have encouraged him, I believe, to say, you know, yeah, everything is well. But according to the story that was told by this friend, by the groom's friend, he said that and eventually went in. So everybody too went to their home, hoping and believing that everything will be calm. Couples fight, they get back together again at night and they're able to resolve their issue. And then early hours in the morning, the friend was called. The friend was called not to the house this time around. The friend was called to the hospital, the man's friend. And by the time he got to the hospital, that was when he realized that the friend had died. The quarrel between husband and wife that was supposed to be things that they get over, talk about it and so on, had ended in someone dying, in the husband dying. And so they called the husband's family. At this point, they had called the wife's family as well, because these are people that probably know themselves because they become family. They were both families were influential in the country, and so they're from the same religion. They're from the same place. So they called both of them, and all the crying, all the things that happened, and the groom probably was taken for to mortuary and so on to be buried eventually because of their religion. And they were to go to the police station because remember, there was a wife and the husband quarreling. What happened? So the wife gave her statement to the police, and the wife said, they got back into the heated argument and there was something, I don't know how to call that thing in English, but there's a thing, an instrument that was not used as a weapon, no, but that it broke, like a glass broke, and then the husband fell on it and it pierced the husband, and the husband started bleeding. Before they could get to the hospital, the husband succumbed to that injury. So, but they started to do autopsy, and it was determined by autopsy that the husband was stabbed with knife. But she maintained and said she didn't stab him. So, according to the story, allegedly, that the mother of the bride and the house help of the bride and one other person, the brother of the bride, went back to the house, to the scene, to the incident scene, and clean up the scene, clean up the blood, clean up the this. Well, I don't know much about that because I would have thought that if the case was reported to the police would have gone straight, before anybody to secure the crime scene. But here is not where we're bringing blame on anybody. No. So eventually, the case went on to the court. It took some years. The wife was put in jail, and accused of murder. She was charged with first-degree murder. And it took time. The lawyers were trying to get her a bail so that she could go home because she was pregnant. But I think it was when there was a medical emergency for her that she was released to go home so that she could be properly treated medically and everything. But the case continued. So by this time, it took years. The wife had had a baby. She had another baby, making two kids, without a father at this point. And at the end of the day, the case was judged and the wife was sentenced to death. The wife was sentenced to death, and so there were a lot of emotions and feelings going on, even in the country that this happened. Remember, I said it happened in an African country. And so they started talking about, some people were not happy that was given. Some people believe the story told by the wife. Some people believe the story told by the friend, the husband's friend. So like I said, we're not here to even say, oh, maybe the wife did it or the wife did not do it. That is not, we're not the judge. And we were not there when that happened. So we can't accuse anybody at this point. But there are certain things I want to bring. They have tried to overturn the judgment, the court of appeal upheld the judgment to say no, that's what is going to happen. And the case was taken to the Supreme Court, And the Supreme Court also, but before the Supreme Court gave a judgment, the president gave a release of the person to say she should just spend some years and not be condemned to death. But before then, before the government gave the president gave the pardon, the case had already gone into the Supreme Court, and so after the president gave the pardon, the Supreme Court gave their judgment because the case was already with them. So they gave the judgment to uphold the death sentence. So at this point, we don't. I was talking to someone that is a legal person, and the person said maybe the president will have waited for the Supreme Court to give the judgment so that the president can override, to still give the pardon, not override the judgment, but give a pardon. But I don't know what that is, and I don't want to say something that um, is still pending, But the truth of what I want to talk about today is the fact that we can respond to things in different ways. I've seen, as a married counselor, I've seen people got so angry that they do something to their partner, sometimes even things that are deadly, sometimes things that are destructive, and so on. And my encouragement today for us is sometimes sleeping over situation can go a long way. I'm not judging this case. No, I just brought this case to speak to us. Not that I'm judging to say this is what the woman should have done. I'm not talking about that. I'm not judging on that case. But I'm bringing that to say naturally things can happen. I've seen where someone, because maybe a man cheat or maybe a woman cheat, and the partner go get acid and pour on the other person. And I mean, a lot of deadly situations. The truth is, for me, I feel that cheating is one of the worst things that somebody can do to their partner, especially if it's something that is continuous. it is it is bad. I'm not saying this is what happened in the case that I've just said. No, I'm just talking generally now. It is bad for somebody that you're married to somebody and then you're living another life consistently. Is a lot. You don't respect that person you're doing, you don't regard that person, you don't regard the covenant that is. There are some people that have made certain mistakes. Yeah, when something is a mistake, it's a different thing. You see soberness, you see seeking for forgiveness, but when it becomes a lifestyle, then that is the worst thing for me as a person. For other people, that may not be. But I don't want to talk so much about adultery today because there is deeper issues with the issue of adultery. But I'm just talking generally about things that can provoke. Some people it's not adultery, some people it's about in-laws. I've seen situation where just in-law coming, problem with in-law become a deadly issue where the man responds so violently or the woman responding so violently. The truth about the matter is that the Bible said about marriage, it said, till death do you part. That does not mean that it is death that the marriage should result in death. No, it's till when natural death comes. Marriage that is deadly is not a marriage that should be in. No. And marriage is not a do or life. I try as much as possible with people to try to stop divorce. And I'm not condemning divorce situation. I've seen some people that if they have stayed on in that marriage, their life they will have died. And so the thing is, how do we respond? How do we treat our anger? Anger can become deadly if we're not careful. The Bible didn't say we shouldn't get angry. We can be angry, but allowing that anger to move on to a deadly situation is where the problem is. I've seen people that, got angry and then slap the other person, and the other person staggered to go hit head on something and die. Real life story. Real life story. I don't know. Yeah, sometimes we can't even judge the person. Sin is sin. I mean, killing somebody is worse, is bad. There's no two way about it. If that was what actually happened, we don't know. That's what the court judge on. But killing somebody is bad. But the thing is, if you are in a situation where you cannot cope with situation that is going on, you do not have to forcefully put yourself in that place. What am I saying? I've heard some people say, what is it now? That your husband committed adultery. Is that the thing? Like, seriously, what matters, the level of pain or certain things differs to different people. For me, that's not just ordinary. For another person, that is ordinary. For another person, even the issue of somebody killing another person may not be much of an issue to that person, but for me, to be a big issue. So it depends on the situation. That's why we can't judge this case. But the truth is, if your partner is doing something, or you have a friend, not just even marriage, you have a friend that keeps provoking and provoking and provoking, the best you can do is to excuse yourself. That's the truth. Do not let people provoke you in such a manner that you do evil to another person. Because the truth is that even if the government or the law does not get hold of you, that is judgment of God already. And God is not going to judge us because this person provoked me to do this. No, we're going to be judged based on what we have done. And I say to people, if people have anger problem, this problem can be resolved. The pastor can pray, and the power of God can remove that in people's life. I've seen that in my life. The second thing is that people can go for therapy, people can go for counseling. That's why my advice, like I always say to all pastors, is that a pastor should be able to even take classes or courses in counseling to understand what counseling is about. Because I always said I was in Nigeria and I would counsel, but I was not giving much counseling at that particular time. But I was giving some form of counseling. But it was when I went to England and I studied counseling that I realized that, oh my, what I was doing wasn't that much of a counseling, that a better way to counsel people. So it's good for every pastor together. But if there are things that are provoking you, you remove yourself from the situation instead of doing things. I've heard people say a lot of time, oh, this man, if you continue to behave, I'm going to kill you. Or the woman will say, oh, or the man will say, oh, this woman, I'm going to kill you. No, don't let somebody else drag you into evil, because you are the one that will be judged for that evil, not the person. Because if they were going to give this judgment, even if the man is to be judged, they will say, oh, they're judging him for adultery. Adultery is not going to take life sentence. But murder, killing somebody, is going to take life sentence or death. My word for us today is response. How are you responding to situations around you? How are you responding? If we look at the Bible concerning Eve, every religion know Eve and Adam. Adam's Eve to the serpent, which is the devil, in the Garden of Eden was the thing that began. He gave audience to what she was not supposed to give audience to. Oh, did God say you cannot eat of this garden? And then she started talking. We need to be careful. We need to be careful. And if somebody today, you're telling yourself, oh, it's just me. When I get angry, I've seen people even say that, unfortunately. When I get angry, nobody can hold me. Nobody can caution me when I get angry. That is evil because you may just do something terrible one day that is going to end your whole life completely. These are now two children without father, without mother, because of anger. There was a story that was told, a real life story. Then I used to travel from Lagos to from Ibadan to Jos when I was in the University of Jos. That is traveling from the west all the way down um to the north. Then I used to travel by road. That's with bus. And I think we were traveling one day and somebody talked about what had happened, on the same road that we're taking. We had actually stayed at a restaurant to eat because it's like a 12 hours ride by bus to get to the north then. And so the particular notorious place where people will park, because after some hours they will park on a particular state, and there are restaurants in that place, people that want to eat, people that want to use the bathroom, whatever you want to do, you can do that before they continue the journey. And so there was this bus that was carrying somebody from that area, also from the west, and they were going to the north, and they stopped at that place where buses will stop for people to eat. And this man, before they got to that place, he allegedly said that there was a passenger, which other people testified of, that there was a passenger they were having problem in the bus. They didn't know themselves from Adam. They just got in the bus, like you said, oh, this person squeezed me, because the buses will usually take more passengers than they should take. If three people were to sit in a place, they will say four people had to sleep there, sit there so that they could get more money. And so that was it. So this guy was like, "Oh, your hand touched me. Oh, you slept on my shoulder." So the guy was like, "Please, just, I'm sorry." But this other guy was really giving problem. Maybe he was frustrated about some things or so on. So they got to the place where they were going to eat, and they ordered their food different. They were sitting on different tables. And I don't know how they got into an argument again, sitting down where everybody was there seated, waiting for their food. And this other guy that was the troublemaker, like who used that word, stood up, and went to where this other guy sat, and the other guy sat up. He was angry and frustrated at this point, but everybody was telling this second guy to say, calm down, you've been patient, let's get into this. And he said, no. I think the other guy pushed him. And he said, no, he's been patient, that this, that, and he just came and slapped. I don't know how that scene will have been, but I've been in that restaurant, so I can imagine what slapped this other guy. So he slapped the other guy. The guy staggered and then fell to hit his head. And so everybody was like, oh, there's blood, there's blood. So they were telling the other guy to get up, and the guy wasn't getting up. And somebody went there and tried to help him, and then they realized he wasn't moving. Everything was so fast. It wasn't moving, and they started shouting. Maybe in another bus, there was a medical person came out, looked, and then he said it was dead, and they had to call the police. Of course, the boss had to go after some people gave their statement. Nobody was going to wait. The guy was detained. The other dead person was taken to mortuary, and nobody knew how the story ended. But definitely, the person that is alive is the one that was going to be guilty because the other person was dead. So the story, other people that could give witness, they had to go. They were not willing to stay behind to the police. What is all the story saying? I'm not saying sit down and let people walk over you over and over again, but also be careful with your response. It does not have to be deadly. It does not have to be the point of raising knife against one another. Do not let that happen to you. I know some people have had to defend themselves. I'm not talking about when somebody bring a knife at you or somebody wants to kill you. That's a different situation entirely. Everybody have the right to defend themselves. But when it has not gotten to that place and it's gotten to the place of argument that the other person is not going to attack you, please let us be careful how we respond. Let us be careful how we allow anger to lead us. I always say something. There is only one good thing that uncontrolled anger can do: destruction. I'm sure you are shocked to say I said the only good thing, because that's the only thing. Every other thing is destruction, 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 because what we are saying is good is also destruction. Anger is destructive. I've seen where somebody slapped a child and the child eventually became deaf. Real life story. These are even people that are close to me. Anger is destructive in marriage, at workplace, and everything. Not just anger of attacking the person physically, even the things you say verbally. Even the things we say verbally, people have destroyed with the things we say verbally when we're really having uncontrolled anger. You can pray every day for God to keep you calm. If there is situation in marriage, always find a third person after you have prayed. People will say, when I was getting married, they will say, oh, don't bring in a third party. No, you can bring in a guided third party into your relationship. You should even have a mentor to start with in your relationship. Mentor that can mentor both of you, mentor that relationship so that when situation comes, they can come into the situation and resolve the issue. Anger can become deadly if it is uncontrolled, because at that point you have lost the control of your proper sense, and the anger becomes a spirit that takes over. And of course, it's a bad spirit. When it takes over, it can be deadly. I just continue to pray for the family of people that has happened to, and even the family. A lot of family have been victim of things like this, where either the husband got angry, killed the wife. We have had even in Nigeria something that happened, some years ago, where a man got angry and stabbed the wife like multiple times. I think it was over 20 stabbing, over 20 knife wound on the wife till she died. Unfortunately, the guy was carrying Bible, you know. So we should be careful of our anger. Sleep over things. You don't have to respond to every situation. That's maturity. Maturity is even when you begin to choose what you respond to. That's maturity. I pray that the Lord be with all of us, and I pray that the Lord help our relationship and relationships out there so that we can have life. The essence of marriage is to have a better life, so that you come with your good self and the other person come with their good self, and you join that force together and you have a better life. That is the purpose of God for marriage, so that both of you come together, bring in your strength, walk over your weaknesses, and achieve something greater than one person will not be able to achieve. If marriage is getting sour, please talk to somebody about it. Do not let it become deadly. And I want to say this for people living in abusive relationship. Hmm, it's difficult for me to advise, but I will still say it anyway. Seek help. Talk to somebody. It is not of God for someone to stay in abusive relationship and say, "Oh, I'm doing it for my children." No, you are destroying your children the more. You deserve dignity. You deserve to be treated well, whether you're a man or you're a woman. Respect for one another is very important in relationship. Relationship is not about one person, it's about the two party in the relationship. That you love one another, that is not one-sided. That you honor one another, that is not one-sided. That you respect one another, that is not one-sided. That you seek the interest of one another, not one-sided. I pray that the Lord help you and the Lord continue to shine his face upon you in the name of Jesus. I want to encourage you, please share this video with somebody. It may just save somebody's life and it may just encourage someone and help someone build a successful relationship. Till I see you next week, God bless you. Bye for now.